made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Chiro Sushi, Barbara Eaton's 56-day chiropractic bootcamp, California Jam, Move Well University, the Black Diamond Club, Pure Chiro Notes, the Chiro Dex app, Dr. Alok Trivedi, Chiro Spark, Chirogram, Chiropractic Wealth Management, 8 Weeks to Wellness, Integrative Freedom, and Element Mattresses. Let's hustle.
All right, guys, welcome to episode 31 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your co-host, Luke Millette, and here's your host, Jim, to tell you all about our guest.
So, Mary Lucus Flannery has a really cool concept that she helps chiropractors with, and it's called the Art of the Story Project. Stay tuned for more information. So, Dr. Mary, would you mind just sharing with our audience a little bit about your chiropractic story and what influenced you to become a chiropractor?
Absolutely. I'm a little bit of an unusual chiropractor in that I not only didn't have an initial vision of myself as a chiropractor, I meet so many chiropractors, they often have this idea early on, they want to be a chiropractor, or at least they want to help people and they want to be in healthcare and things like that. And I had none of that. I come from a very art-oriented family, definitely was planning to do something in the arts. I have a degree in English literature with a writing minor, and my highest aspiration was that I would become a publisher, an editor, a writer, who knows what. And I stumbled into chiropractic because I met and got engaged to a young man who was already applied and accepted to chiropractic college, and off we moved to Davenport, Iowa for him to begin his chiropractic education. And I got a job at Palmer Davenport as, we were called admissions reps, so we did like admissions, recruitment, all that kind of stuff. So really my introduction to the profession was to go out on the road to sell chiropractic, but really I almost always had someone with me, which was a practicing chiropractor, would meet me at events and help do the pitch. And what I discovered so organically was how much chiropractors love what they do. And I really enjoyed working with chiropractors, and people would say to me, "You're so excited about chiropractic. Clearly you're a chiropractor, or you're going to be a chiropractor." And I would just resist for 3 years straight. No, that's not my thing. I'm an artist. That's my husband's thing. It took me so long before I finally had an epiphany moment where I recognized that the way I could use my gifts to change the world was so much more in line with who I was through the vehicle of chiropractic than it was by publishing and doing things like that. And of course, since you already know I'm here, realize that it's sort of extra funny that the story comes full circle to a great deal of my professional career now is all about those skills in the arts, in writing, and in creating that has made me uniquely able to situate myself in the chiropractic profession. So all of the pieces came together. I did go to chiropractic college, I did practice, I started a family, I did all of that, but my professional career in chiropractic for the last 12 or 13 years has been essentially learning sales in chiropractic and teaching others to do it. My job right now is I work at Life Chiropractic College West. I'm the Dean of Enrollment, which means I oversee admissions, recruitment, marketing, and communications, all the parts of the college that are about sales. And what we do collectively is we help people discover if the chiropractic profession is the right path for them, which is a pretty big sales job. It's not just saying try chiropractic care. It's the whole enchilada. And it has become the perfect intersection of my passion and love for chiropractic and the difference that we can make as chiropractors, and the ability to communicate and help people to find their way of tapping into their voice in chiropractic. So yeah, I've kind of got a weird chiropractic story, but it's a good one.
Yeah, and I know you do something that makes you really unique as you focus on something I believe is called the art of the story.
Yeah, I have a side hustle, as so many of us do, called, I almost hate calling it a side hustle because then that makes it seem like it's less important, but ultimately,
are kind of dirty.
Yeah, my full-time job for Life West is, the first on the list whenever there's things to be done. But it's a pretty incredible, as most of your listeners are dealing with, how much time you can find on the side and how much joy you can find in spending your time on the side in doing other things. So it's probably about 4 years ago that the Art of Story Project was born. I was one of the founding members of the League of Chiropractic Women, and we were having conversations about how we could have as big of an impact, really offer something that would make a difference. And we were noticing that women tend to be less likely to be on chiropractic stages or on chiropractic leadership boards and things like that. Like the voice of women is just less present. And while this is a deep conversation that I don't think we're going to have time for today, I can tell you that one of the things I came up with was when women are given a chance to present their big idea, to make a difference and use our unique perspective and point of view, we really have to bring our most A game. Like we have to truly deliver at a quality that can't be ignored. And so I began by teaching the women in the League of Chiropractic Women to be public speakers. And I have a lot of experience in public speaking and presenting, so I took that experience and I went back to the books, and studied all the essential tenets of communication, especially in public speaking, and built a class, an online class. So that's how the whole thing got started. It's really become now a much bigger project while there are still classes in public speaking and things like that. The meat behind everything that I do is this idea of story. As we hear in chiropractic all the time, so many chiropractors have been told, just tell the story. And that sentiment is spot on. The challenge is that telling the story is an art. And like any art, if you don't have any training, it doesn't even matter if you're gifted, you're not truly able to share that art with the world at the level that you could do it. And when I think about how many hours that most chiropractors have in the art of adjusting, thousands upon thousands of hours in the art of adjusting, or in the practice of chiropractic from a business and systems place. And then you look at how many hours chiropractors have in communicating, particularly communicating the story and the most influential, powerful parts of what we do as a chiropractor, you can see why we have this huge gap between our ability to deliver the goods and our ability to help people understand why they need to even come and see a chiropractor in the first place.
So do you have any mantras or quotes that help you with your momentum and commitment as a chiropractor?
Well, as a writer, I'm a pretty big word nerd. So I have actually kind of a lot that get under my skin on certain days. But there's a couple go-tos that, tend to persist no matter what I'm doing. One of my favorites right now is Brené Brown, who's an incredible writer. She says that we need to choose courage over comfort. And that means a lot to me as a doer, as a maker, as a creative, that sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is to just put ourselves out there and be real and be authentic. That's been a huge theme, both in my work and in what I teach other people to do. So that's big. One of my lasting favorites is the great Jim Rohn said, the greatest gap in life is the gap between knowing and doing. And I find that many of us, especially myself, have lots of times when you know what to do, but you just don't make a system or an opportunity to get it done. And if we can just start doing the doing and quit just being stuck in the knowing, that's where change happens. But it takes courage, right? Again, the two of them kind of go together. I find often for me and for people I coach, the reason the doing's not happening is because of fear. So if we can choose courage over comfort and get into the doing, the two go together to really get the ball rolling.
So I'm going to do something a little off script with you. I usually follow a pretty strict paradigm on how we do the interview process, but
we're going rogue. Woohoo!
I know that you're an educator. How did you transition from being the gal that was checking people in doing admissions to become the chiropractor to now becoming the educator?
Well, as these things happen, none of those steps was very deliberate. I started by saying I'm going to be a practicing chiropractor, and I was in full-time practice. Actually, I was in the version of practice that so many women have, which is I was having my babies, and so while I was working full-time, it was kind of a weird hybrid where I'd have my kids at the office with me and all these other things, and I was super engaged in really applying the chiropractic salutogenic philosophy to pregnancy and birth and post-birth procedures. I found that a lot of students and what I'd learned in school hadn't really taught us how to apply those vitalistic principles beyond the nervous system. And so I started teaching classes. I was practicing in Davenport, Iowa at the time. So I started, and I had lots of students who like to come and observe in my practice. So I started teaching them and local midwives and doulas classes on how to apply the chiropractic philosophy to a bunch of things surrounding birth. So that was really where the education bug started, and also the entrepreneurial bug, because I would charge for those classes. They took a lot of work to put on. And they were just so much fun, and the feedback I got was that this was content that the students weren't getting anywhere else, and that was super valuable to them. And I started to really experience that awesome exchange, like even exchange with the universe, when you start giving back and it's making a difference, and you see what an impact you can make with what you know if you're willing to get out of your comfort zone and share it. And then I eventually, we moved from Davenport down to Atlanta, Georgia. And someone really came to me who knew my skill set and asked me if I would apply for a position that was open as the director of recruitment, because I had so much experience doing things like that in the past. And that somehow turned into this 12-year run now as a chiropractic college administrator. And there's no way you can work in a chiropractic college, at least not for me, and not be just deeply embedded in the students' lives. I spend a lot of time with the students in school really seeing where are the gaps in what they're exposed to, and how it's not even usually what they're exposed to, it's how do they apply this? How do they use the things they're learning in school right now and then? And I started seeing those gaps in communication, in telling the chiropractic story, in becoming the leaders they could be by applying all these skills. And so that's where I just kept over and over, no matter where I've worked, I end up being either a leader of some chiropractic group or putting together some side project to help young chiropractors to be empowered on their journey to become their own authentic best selves.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Chiro Sushi, Barbara Eaton's 56-day chiropractic boot camp, California Jam, Move Well University, the Black Diamond Club, Pure Chiro Notes, the Chiro Dex app, Dr. Alok Trivedi, Chiro Spark, Chirogram, Chiropractic Wealth Management, 8 Weeks to Wellness, Integrative Freedom, and Element Mattresses. Let's hustle. Wow, this conversation is going really awesome. I love it. I love the interview process with you. I can tell that you frame your answers properly, and you give good information to our listeners out there. So I appreciate the way things are moving right now. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. You left us off on a perfect time because I think that the interview process is kind of like it's a conversation that's for the time capsule. It's an evergreen process. And I think that people can come back to these and learn from them constantly, and they can, use the information that we share as something as a springboard. So the next question for you is, what would we be able to accomplish if more people knew about your cause and what you're doing for the chiropractic profession?
Right. Well, that's obviously the big thing that I try to stay tapped into when I'm balancing out, the various elements of my work is, what is it all about? What's it all for? Because if I don't stay in touch with my cause, it is easy to become overwhelmed or frustrated or stuck on what's not working. But what I think about most of the time in all of my work is how important it is that we continue to raise the bar in chiropractic. And when I say raise the bar, I think the chiropractic profession has done an incredible job of having really high standards for great delivery of the chiropractic adjustment and support of each other and community. But the places where I would like to see, I know that this profession can benefit from seeing big growth, is raising the bar in our ability to communicate and connect with our clients, with our patients. And so I see that this is a universal question. You're absolutely right. This is evergreen. Part of what I've been writing a lot about and talking a lot about recently is the transition into now the young chiropractors that are growing their practice are millennials. And then the next generation is not far behind, the Wi-Fi generation. And how we communicate and how chiropractors that are millennials communicate with their patients is a little different than what they're being taught. And when we start to teach people the fundamental principles and how to apply it to their own unique, authentic way of expressing themselves and sharing their gifts and their why with the world, then they can take those fundamental things like storytelling and always make it work every time. It is evergreen. But raising that bar so that we know this is part of our work as chiropractors every bit as much as honing our art as an adjuster or whatever that's where I see the gap. So if I was to wave a magic wand over the chiropractic profession, I would see everybody get really fired up about communication and connecting with people on an authentic level.
So where do you see the chiropractic profession in 20 years?
Well, 20 years, it's kind of really fun to think about it, right? Because 20 years from now, we're going to have not only the millennials well into their sort of end of their careers. I mean, not their end, obviously they'll still be practicing, but we have huge influence in our profession by the people who are coming in, because they're the ones who tend to see like what's happening, what's changing. They're the innovators, they're the disruptors. And while I know that that's hard, I'm a non-millennial, and I know lots of millennials, and when I talk to non-millennials, they get really like very fired up about this conversation, but also kind of like agitated about it. There's this like natural tension in the shift of graduations. So what's that going to look like for the profession? From what I can see as the core values of the next two generations coming in, is there's an incredible commitment to making a difference and to redefining success, and to look at success for an individual, not necessarily like what your mom or your grandma thinks success is, which means that suddenly this profession is perfectly poised to be this unbelievable choice for people's careers. We've got incredible flexibility. Our profession is built on the fundamental premise of making a difference, lasting purpose, creating sort of like choose your own adventure, right? As entrepreneurs, the way that we reach out to people, it's like the dream profession. And if we can, as the educators and the support people to this profession, people like you and I, continue to make the tools that young chiropractors can seize and utilize to define success and then achieve it, I think that the chiropractic profession might look incredibly different in 20 years, and the fight stops being about how, we define ourselves compared to other professions or things like that, and we just step into our own truth. So I think there's some pretty shining years ahead, personally.
So what are some of your key marketing strategies, and how do you use media to your advantage?
Well, the marketing strategies that I teach and use myself that have been most effective are some that I've already alluded to. It has a lot to do with the quality of the content is really my area of focus. I think that the amount of content you put out and how you put it out and the strategies and the techniques, those things matter. But there's a lot of people teaching those things. Where I focus are areas that I don't see a lot of people teaching, and that is what's inside of that content. How do you take what's already maybe good content, a good idea, and really make it great, really make it relatable, be able to, without too much effort, hone that content. And that's where the Art of Story project comes in. If you understand the fundamental principles of storytelling and what makes a story work and what makes a story not work, you can apply that to any content. And a lot of that comes down to, again, things that this up-and-coming generation is great at, the millennials. It's all about vulnerability and authenticity and not trying to be the cool guy or impress people or all of that. It's about being real and showing what's working, what's not working. There's a lot of transparency, and I'm sure you observe it in some of the best content creators out there. So those are the strategies that I love to dabble with myself, experiment with, and teach others to use.
You touched on a point right there. You said those people that others follow. Who would you recommend to some people to possibly look after if they want to learn how to be more effective with this?
Oh, well, when it comes to storytelling, it's kind of fun because there's a lot of great content creators in storytelling. You do have to consume a fair amount of stories to start to recognize what feels like a great story. I love to listen to the podcast The Moth, like the little fluttering insect, MOTH. It's been around for a long time. It's part of the story slam movement that's actually going on all over the place. There's live moth events all over the place, but it's when people get up on a stage with no notes, no PowerPoint slide, no nothing, and tell a real story about their lives. It's not necessarily the kind of storytelling that we're going to exactly do in chiropractic, but it gives us the benchmark for what makes a great story. As far as content creators who put out regular content that I think totally hits the nail on the head with that authenticity and things, I've been listening a lot to a gentleman who has a YouTube channel. He puts out a load of content. His name is Kyle Cease. He's a former comedian, stand-up comedian turned I don't know, lifestyle guru. I don't think there's even a definition for what Kyle Cease is, but I love his content. I listen to a ton of podcasts all the time whenever I'm, folding the laundry, doing the dishes. So I don't know, I love Tim Ferriss and for, inspiration, or Tara Brach for peace and calm and things like that. I mean, there's just such a range. And then I read books all the time too. I usually have a stack on my table, all half ridden. I can't say the word, half read. There we go. That are all written up with notes all over, because I write all over in my books, because I'm always getting inspired and finding things that fire me up, because I am a writer myself. So, there's a lot of content. I guess that's probably not a good answer. I gave you too much.
No, you stopped at the right time, because one of the questions that we'll ask you down the line here before we finish up with you is about what you're reading and what it's doing for you, and how you engage yourself with that content. But let's hold our horses just a little bit here.
Okay.
So Luke says, why? Just ask it.
Okay, so what's the question? What am I reading right now?
Yeah, what are you reading right now?
Let's see. Right now, I'm finishing Brene Brown's newest book, In the Wilderness, Into the Wilderness, something about wilderness. It's incredible. She is my go-to author for really understanding authenticity and vulnerability from a place that's that perfect balance of being real, but not being so real that you're a victim and you're like letting things hang out that you shouldn't. So I find her she's my spirit guide on vulnerability and things like that. I am also reading, actually for the third time, Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic. That's my inspiration. I love her for creativity. She's just like the guru for anyone who's a creative and trying to figure out how to tap into your most creative self. So those would be some biggies that jump out, although I'm always doing something fun too. I mean, I'm reading a book on sailing right now too, because that's another, side passion. I think it's important for people who are entrepreneurs, chiropreneurs, to recognize that some of the things you do that seem like they have nothing to do with your business, your side hustle, are actually your greatest opportunities to find these new insights and ways to relate your work to the world. So I would highly recommend having at least something in your life that you love that has nothing to do with your business.
So what's your favorite app or technology to keep you engaged with your audience?
My favorite personal medium tends to be writing, so I love the app and the website Medium, Medium. It is a writing platform where an incredible amount of writers self-publish. You go in and you're able to tag your posts with keywords. By doing that, I've done quite a lot of publishing on Medium. I've gotten some pretty advanced placement by having people like my work, where then now the app itself puts it in front of people. And especially with keywords that are chiropractic oriented, there's not a lot of people out there using them yet. So it's kind of a platform that's very popular but isn't oversaturated for what we do. So I would highly recommend that to chiropractors. If you have any interest in writing or in reading, it's just a brilliant place that's grown a lot already in the last couple of years. I mean, it has grown tremendously in the last year and a half. But there's still lots of opportunities for you to be a contributor as well, which is, you don't always get that choice.
So yeah, I'm going to rewind back to what you said about the moth. Is that kind of would you position that kind of like a freelance Toastmasters, or kind of off the cuff, just storytelling?
It's more storytelling than Toastmasters. I mean, Toastmasters, if you've studied with them, it's the value of it is you learn a system. The challenge with it is it's so regimented in what is required, what's considered good or not good, that I personally feel like it needs to be taken, sort of in small measure. When I've been coaching people on content, when they let go of all the rules and they let go of, I have to stand just so, and I have to have my eyes here and my hands here and all that stuff, that actually keeps us from really connecting. And so what I love about the Moth is it is sort of that there's no rules. They do audition to get on the Moth, so it's high caliber content. I mean, these are really talented storytellers. So I recommend the Moth and other storytelling There's a load of storytelling podcasts. If you're really interested, just go search the internet for the best storytelling podcasts. There are so many. There's Love and Radio. There's a huge list of them. But it gets you to see what it's like to be inside of a short story that's about a personal experience and how it can just deeply touch your heart and influence you to be more.
Well, this is the point in the program where we ask our guests what websites and links they want to give to our listeners so that people can find out more about you and what you're doing.
Ooh, all the places to find me. Well, right now I'm working on rebooting a podcast that I made a couple years ago. The podcast is called ADIO Radio. ADIO being that chiropractic phrase, above, down, inside, out. I did one season about 3 years ago, which was specifically for prospective students, and it was all about understanding the fundamentals of the chiropractic profession. And I still have students come to me all the time and say, I found your podcast and it really helped. But a friend of mine and I are going to do a second season, and we're tweaking that format into chiropractic and millennials. So it won't just be for prospective students. He's a creative, a filmmaker who works a ton with chiropractors, and I'm a chiropractor who works with millennials. So that content will be coming out hopefully January, February. We've got a couple episodes in the can, but we took a break. So we're going to get back into it in January and put that out. So you can find me at ADIO Radio. You can find me at Medium, that website I was just telling you about. You just go to Medium and you put in Mary Lucus Flannery and you'll find me. And of course I can be found on Facebook. Again, look for Mary Lucus Flannery, or Instagram, but those tend to be more places where I would post, say, a new article I wrote or something like that. I do have a website, which is www.theartofstoryproject.com. And if you're interested in learning more about storytelling, you can click a button and all you have to do is give me your email, and I'll send you a PDF that gives information on different ways you can integrate story into your practice right away. And then you can just follow the new content I put up on that website periodically as well. So I guess there's a lot of places to follow me.
Well, you're what everybody that I found should be doing, is becoming your own media company. And that's something that, a lot of the influencers will tell anybody right now, is we have the opportunity to disseminate information to our audiences at a broader level than has ever been known before, especially at a personal level. And if you start building your audience the right way, you can have a real influence on people, like you were talking about with that Kyle Cease guy. He just keeps on putting out good content and you love it. So I'm going to end up the interview with you today. Is there anything that we didn't ask you that you'd like to share with our audience?
I think you actually did an incredible job of following my meandering little offshoots of conversation. I'm just really delighted to get a chance to chat with both of you and to connect with your audience.
Well, I want to thank you again for being our guest today. I know this has been a really impactful episode for everyone listening out there.
And I just want to say thank you for taking some time out of your day to sharing your art of the story and all the information that you have, because I know that you have a lot to give to the whole chiropractic profession. So I think that this episode's a real blessing to get this into the ears of our audiences.
Well, thank you for being content creators. The profession needs lots of people out there making great content, and I'm so glad that you're amongst them.
Oh, thank you so much.
And we want you to enjoy the rest of your day, okay?
I sure will. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mary.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.